It's your number one station, RX Radio, playing you so much cool music, and it's a beautiful Wednesday. It is the 21st of December, 2022, and everybody is still talking about Meghan and Harry.
Of course.
And now they're also talking about Jeremy Clarkson, who wrote an article for The Sun, which is a UK publication, in which he said some very spicy things about Meghan Markle, for which he's being, he's being put to task to face some serious consequences.
And
Why?
to apologize.
Apparently, the things he said were found to be very offensive to a lot of people. So let's just take a look at what he said. So he's reported to have said the following. He said something like, he was dreaming of the day when she, Meghan, is made to parade naked through the streets in every town in Britain while the crowds chant shame and throw lumps of excrement at her.
Okay, now that is extreme.
He hates her at a cellular level.
I know.
As in viscerally, just... Now,
I look at you and I just want to puke.
So, on one hand, we can appreciate a person's right to free expression. If someone feels a certain way about a thing or a person, or, they ought to be able to express it. But I think there's such a thing as civility as well.
Exactly.
And there are less crude ways of expressing your disdain for someone.
Exactly. And the point will be driven home. We would get what you're saying, because right now there is a lot to say about Meghan Markle and Harry, their, Netflix show and everything they said.
There are people who love them.
And there are people who hate them. But even if I hate you, there are things I'm not going to say. And for this to have been published in a national newspaper, that was the lowest of the low.
Well, it was, it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And so now what's happened is that 60 members of parliament across party lines in the UK, meaning ostensibly Conservatives or, Labour.
The Liberty Party.
They're saying that they need the editor of The Sun to demand an apology from Jeremy Clarkson and for action to be taken against him for this. Now, I don't know why it requires MPs to come forth. What does this have to do with them? Do they not have more serious issues to be dealing with?
But you see, MPs do not work on Mars. MPs are also representatives of the people, and MPs have children. MPs have kids that are aspiring to write and do certain things. And I think in a society, like you said in the beginning, in as much as you may have great disdain for someone, civility should surpass everything. I mean, this guy you like so much, Piers Morgan, has said so many things about Meghan Markle,
and even
but he has never written some. Do you know what
but
it
think
means
about
to say
this.
that you picture someone being,
But
pelted with pieces of excrement?
But think about this. Despite his more modest and polite way of expressing his disdain for Meghan,
yes,
he still lost his job.
But because he went on and
He
on
still
and on for years.
His channel got so many complaints and he had to be released.
And actually, even this one, they're calling for him to be fired.
So maybe regardless of how you phrase it, how politely you say you don't like her, or how vociferously, the consequences shall be the same. I think this is one person you're not allowed to criticize.
No, it's not about Meghan, honestly. For me here, I feel like it's beyond Meghan. It's about civility. It's about what we should allow.
But also, this man is not known for he's not known for being civil. Do you know Jeremy Clarkson?
I do. But this is my sentiment. I feel personally when I saw this, it was not about Meghan and Harry. For me, I felt like no one should be writing like this. No one, I'm a journalist and I'm like, this is not something you publish. Find another way to coin your words, to coin your anger so that we still get it.
And, and if he in fact dislikes her by coming out this way and with this kind of language, he is giving ammunition to her defenders.
Exactly.
Because now they can point to this as a good example of the suffering she experiences.
At the hands of the media, because that is her claim in her new show.
You know what I mean? So for us, or at least for me, who's on the side of, I don't really trust her, I think she's manipulative, I think she's milking the victim thing, and she's just playing us for fools. He's making it harder for people like us, because now they get to point to these articles
something
and
like
say,
this, and they're like, you see, we were right.
So he's done our side no favors. But nonetheless, I still think he's entitled to express himself.
No, he is entitled. And my argument is not that he shouldn't say anything negative. My argument is find better ways. I don't want to read about lumps of excrement being thrown at someone. Find another way.
So as I understand it, and pardon me if you're watching this and I'm getting it wrong, but he was comparing it to a scene from Game of Thrones.
Yes, there is a scene. Did you watch Game of Thrones?
No.
I did.
Okay, so there's a scene in which a person of disrepute was treated in such a way.
There was a queen that was hated so much, and she was a horrible person.
Okay, so that's what happened to her. They dragged her through the streets.
So yes, at some moment when her castle had fallen and she didn't have as much power as she used to have before, she was paraded in the streets, and people started saying shame, shame, as they used to have that bell. So the priest is walking behind her, ringing that bell as people throw things at her and saying shame.
Did they throw feces at her?
Probably.
So that's where he got it from.
Exactly.
So he was just trying to compare it to, he was trying to say, I wish for her to be, essentially shamed like the person.
Exactly.
In this. I think the reference was vague. He just assumed you would get it. With him not having to explain it, but of course it was lost on most people, and even those who understood the reference still thought it was too extreme.
It was too extreme, honestly, because as a writer, and I believe he's a prolific writer, there's so many ways you can be creative with language. You can use a clean word to mean something dirty, and we will still get the message. So he didn't have to go that far. That's my sentiment. Obviously, I have different thoughts regarding the whole Meghan and Harry news show, because I have been very outspoken about Meghan and Harry. I've been in their support from the beginning. But when I saw the trailer this time, I was like, oh gosh, I wish they didn't have to.
Really?
Because in my mind, I was like, this time round, unfortunately, no one is going to be on their side. Okay, there are still people who like them.
It's funny because at least the fans of theirs that I've talked to say that, in fact, it's not as bad as you would think it is. In fact, they didn't insult anybody. They're trying to make it seem like, actually, it's a fair representation of events.
I've had that, but you see, maybe for them, it was too late to pull out, because after the Queen died, now anything that they say, even if they're not attacking the Queen, is not really welcome. People have moved on. Now there is a new era, and everyone is like, I hope they can move on, because this incident, the things they talk about happened a few years ago. We have watched the Oprah Winfrey show, so we have an idea of what really happened. Do you have to go and make another whole show with different episodes talking about your pain? Can't you move on?
No, when there's $100 million at stake.
So for me, I feel like the downside is that the show came out a bit late. That show would have made sense if it dropped right around the time the Oprah Winfrey interview dropped.
Well, maybe, actually, I disagree, because let's say it dropped and then the Queen died, then everyone would hate them, like completely and totally.
Really?
Because there was an outpouring of grief and love for the late Queen.
But they say good things about the Queen.
They
don't attack the Queen. Even in this one, they don't attack the Queen.
Okay.
Harry was very close to his grandmother, and it seemed like she was actually the only person who was.
But
on his
I feel
side
like that's unfair. You can't be saying because as I understand it, they speak in generalities and not in specifics. So, for example, for all the poor treatment they may have received at the hands of the royal family, they won't specifically name someone, right?
Yeah, they don't name names.
So that then will lead many to assume that the Queen is part of the problem.
No, I remember during the Oprah interview where he mentioned that he even went to see the grandmother, they had tea, those things, because he was not seeing his dad and he was not seeing his father. That's how you know who was still talking to him and who wasn't talking to him at all. But of course, in this new show, there is somewhere where he says his brother screamed at him. I think they had something and William lost it on him. And I could understand where William is coming from.
Of course, because if I were him, I'd do more than just yell at that silly boy. Harry. But
Are you that kind of big brother?
Sometimes when your little brother is acting a fool, maybe he needs, he needs a good shaking up.
But I don't know what's wrong with people in the royal family and American women. Because his grandfather, remember Queen Elizabeth was not even supposed to be queen because her uncle was king, and then he absconded for who? An American woman and a divorcee, Wally Simpson. So he abdicated. Queen Elizabeth's father became king. Then, of course, Queen Elizabeth became queen when her father passed. And I'm like, what's wrong with this family and American women? Because even her great-grandfather had actually broken away from the Catholic Church to divorce his then wife, Catherine, so that he could marry Anne Boleyn. There is scandal in this family.
I'm telling you. Well, having dated a few American women, there's a certain,
Tell us.
there's a certain energy they have that's quite appealing.
So you understand, Harry.
And attractive. Mm-hmm. But I do find them to be a bit too intense for my
what
liking.
do you mean by intense?
Like they're too intense. You know, there's just no chill about them. Everything is always dialed up to 11. If she's happy, dialed up to 11. If she's upset, dialed up to 11. If she's horny, dialed up to 11. It's like, I need some balance in my life, and you're a bit too...
So probably that's what happened. And I didn't want to live a day where I would start saying maybe Meghan is a bit of a narcissist. Because probably
a bit.
No, because for me, I was always for her. Because I have watched Harry and, of course, the grief he went through when he lost his mother. But now looking back, I'm like, maybe she used that. Maybe she used that to make sure that Harry sees his wife as so evil and he needs to distance himself from it. Maybe he saw all this, he had this pain, and then through her eyes, he was like, oh my goodness, I can actually leave all this behind and move on.
Well, of course, the day that she decides to leave Harry, which most people are betting on that happening, the day that happens, and he's left with nothing, what's he going to do? Won't he just feel like a total, absolute fool?
But do you think Meghan can leave Harry? Hear me out. Meghan is nothing without Harry. Like Candace Owen said, she used this to become the A-list star that she never was.
Well,
so without Harry, who is Meghan?
Haven't you seen instances of women latching on to famous men, and then when either the men are now no longer famous or they've milked the fame for what it's worth, they're quite happy to move on.
But you see, Harry will always be a prince. Harry will always come from that family, and Meghan will only be the lady who was married to the guy in that family. So I feel like she makes more sense if she latches onto him for the rest of her life, just like Wally Simpson did with Harry's great uncle.
They actually lasted. And
they lasted up to his death. They never separated.
Can you imagine Harry and Meghan at 70 years old?
They could stay together because all the money they are making today is partly because of the title Harry has. He's a prince, a real life prince.
Well, isn't it possible for her to, for example, after, say, divorcing him, to get roles in movies and TV shows? And certainly there'll be book deals coming her way.
Of course, book deals.
And even more Netflix specials.
But
How Harry harassed me and emotionally manipulated me into marrying him.
It's going to be hard for her to come back, because if she comes out and does that, then she will have proved everyone who was against her rights. And seeing the kind of person she is, she would rather stick it in there even when she's not happy. Because you cannot embarrass yourself twice.
Well, you know what? If she's the narcissist that a lot of people think she is, then you might be right. She might just be willing to stick it out. Because this is one of those situations where it almost seems like there could be no way out for her.
There is no way out because people can actually understand
She would be hated worse than Amber Heard. If she divorced Harry, wouldn't she?
I would hate her because I love Harry. So if she divorces that man, honestly, even when they did the Oprah interview, my sentiments were, I really hope against hope that these two remain married for the rest of their lives.
That's a lot of pressure.
I know.
Way more pressure than most people can handle. But anyway, we'll see what happens. And we'll see if the apology or the punitive measures will be forthcoming. I know that Jeremy Clarkson did apologize.
He didn't apologize.
Well, he say
said
sorry?
Something that looked like an apology, but he didn't apologize. He said
It was a non-apology.
He said, "Oh gosh, I put my mouth in it. I said things I shouldn't have.
Isn't
I'll be
that that's
careful
an
next time."
apology?
He did not say the words. He didn't say, "I am sorry," and that's what the MPs were looking out
Well,
for.
we all know that wouldn't make a difference. They're after his neck now. They definitely want it chopped off.
But you see, Fatboy, sometimes I'm like, sometimes you're saying that the media is full of crap, right? And that they report things depending on who butters their bread.
Mm-hmm.
And now when media write things like this and they are called to apologize, you're still the same guy who says, the guy did something right. So where do you fall?
I just like him. I like guys like that.
You like people. In Uganda, they say, "Oyagala byononese," you like spoiled things.
Don't put it that way.
That is how it is.